Hey there, I'm Ton on High, and today I'm doing something a little different. I've made a handful of these build videos, but today I'm cramming a handful of builds into a single video just for fun. Just think of it as kind of a lightning round for builds in the Division 2. As always, I recommend these for challenging missions for farming, but where you take them is entirely up to you. Hot Swap. First up is my latest favorite, a build I call Hot Swap because it relies on weapon switching for certain buffs. This is another Crusader shield build, meant to be played up close, but it's more of a tanky DPS than it is an actual tank. The goal here is to avoid getting bored by continually using the same weapon, as I often do with other builds. The reason I made a build like this was because I hadn't used any of these swap talents before, and I wanted to see if I could make them work. Start with a good shotgun like an ACS-12 as primary, with any damage talent you want such as Close and Personal or Optimist. Add a great SMG as secondary like a CMMG Banshee with Unwavering. For your chest piece talent, obviously we want Gunslinger, and for the backpack talent we want Versatile. This combination will give you tremendous burst damage potential immediately after switching weapons, for about 5 seconds, which gives you more than enough time to burst 1 or 2 enemies down. Switch back to the other gun if there are still enemies, rinse repeat until they're all dead. For gear pieces, you have options, but you want to stack as much crit as you possibly can. A 3-piece Sokolov and/or a 3-piece Badger Tuff makes a great combination in addition to providing some survivability with the armor on kill, but any well-rolled chest piece with Gunslinger is technically fine. I prefer Gunner over Firewall for the additional armor on kill and for variety's sake. If you want to integrate an exotic, the Coyote mask is not a bad choice to switch out for one of your Sokolov pieces. I run this as a 4-2-0 for core attributes to do serious damage. For skills, Crusader Shield is a must, but the other is as usual up to you. I've tried Repair Drone, but as usual without skill tiers or repair skills, it doesn't really do a whole lot. This is a fun build for close-up running and gunning, and it allowed me to use some stuff I'd been hiding in my stash for a while, as well as talents I'd never used before. Denver. Next up is my other latest favorite, something I call the Denver build because the core attributes are 303. This is another CC DPS hybrid that plays heavily to the strengths of the Gunner spec, relying on a Stoner LAMG with Strained, the Coyote mask exotic, a chest piece with Spark, preferably Door Kicker's Knock, a backpack with Calculated, the Striker Drone, and the Blinder Firefly. I'd also recommend some Contractors gloves, Fox Prayer kneepads if you have them, and stacking as much crit chance as you can up to 50%. Any rolls not invested in crit chance and damage should be invested in status effects to strengthen your blind effect. This is like an all-red DPS build that took a wild turn halfway through, and it works! This setup strikes a great balance and has a lot of active gameplay, with elements of run and gun as well as reliance on skill use. With Calculated, you won't technically need to stick to cover unless your Firefly is on cooldown and you want it back up sooner. It's a bit of a glass cannon in a sense, because without any additional armor, you will be fairly squishy. However, the drone takes a lot of the attention off of you, and the Firefly works great for stunning enemies so you can focus them down, even if they're not close to each other. It's a little surprising how well the parts of this build all work together so great. I've run this with the Banshee pulse as well, but I prefer the Firefly, especially when in open spaces. With the enemies occupied by your drone or blinded, you'll be able to fire the Strained Stoner for longer, taking advantage of the full crit damage buff over and over again. You can play up close, or you can engage from a distance and still do tons of damage. Just don't be afraid to use an armor kit when you need to. Turret Drone. Next up is my take on a common meta build, the Turret Drone skill build. This one doesn't have a more entertaining name because it's actually a pretty bland setup. Technician spec, bust out your harmony or just get in sync on both primary and secondary weapons, kinetic momentum on your chest, and combined arms on your backpack, preferably the force multiplier, with assault, turret, and striker drone backing you up. Due to the low timers of the buffs of this build, I think it works best with automatic weapons, so find yourself a nice FAMAS or G36 within sync and go to town. A lot of people like running the hardwire gear set for this build, but I prefer the additional attributes and effects of the brand sets, though obviously we aren't trying to stack explosive damage, so focus on brands like Hana-Yu and Murakami. As with any turret build, the setup will truly shine if you can master turret placement. While your drone and turret are out, you'll be doing tons of additional skill damage from both. In fact, what makes this build a lot of fun is hitting both buttons to target an enemy with each skill and then aiming to fire at them as well, taking the combined arms approach literally. Stacking skill damage is helpful, though it's up to you whether you want to stack skill haste or go for stacking crit, or a mixture of the two. The turret and drone don't crit themselves, but they do have fairly low cooldowns as it is, and you should be doing at least some gun damage, even though your tech will be doing a lot of the work as well. With the extra skill tier perk from Technician, you get to decide whether you want to run this as a 105 for more gun damage, or a 015 for more survivability. Both options work great. The Anchor V2. The first real build video I did on this channel was for the Anchor, a setup that relied on Overwatch, Composure, and the Quiet Roar. I still believe in this setup, but I've made it much stronger by adding the Coyote mask and Contractor's gloves, as well as completing the 3-piece Providence set. Some would still recommend either the Sawyer's kneepads instead of the mask, or the Fox's Prayer if you want to add a little more out of cover damage, but I will leave that up to you to decide. A 2-4-0 attribute spread with as much crit as you can stack will give you ample time to fire the Quiet Roar in most scenarios. Between keeping the Overwatch buff up and trying to suppress red bar or ranged enemies to proc Perfect Overwhelm, this is far from a mindless hold the trigger down until everything dies sort of setup. The V1 of this build didn't include any exotic, and to upgrade it I decided that stacking crit and providing team support via the Coyote buff fit in very well with the theme of the build as far as Overwatch. This build is by no means complex or overly fancy, but it is quite effective when played properly. Also, while generic in the talents department, this build lets you round it out to your liking as far as skills. On the other hand, having no skill tiers discourages skill usage a bit anyway. Before, I suggested the Revive Hive and a heal, but these days neither is really all that necessary if you're just farming gear in challenging missions. Might be a good chance to try out the Demolisher Firefly if you haven't, or go with the ever-reliable Striker Drone. Skill support. When I matchmake into random groups and see at least one skill build, often I will switch to skill support. This build focuses on buffing and repairing skills as well as lowering cooldowns, and is very much a group play build. With a nice Reformation or Future Perfect primary weapon, Kinetic Momentum again on the chest piece, Overclock on the backpack, BTSU gloves, and the Striker Drone alongside the Artificer Hive, this build obviously requires the Technician spec and benefits hugely from it. This would also work well with the Sniper turret or any other deployed skill that stays out. Very similar to the turret drone build in a lot of ways. On its face, this is simply a skill build that does not focus on explosive damage, and can go 105 or 015 for core attributes. While repair skills is beneficial here, it's not required by any means since you'll only be repairing tech and not agents. The difference in armor is pretty huge. With the buffs and skill heals provided by your Artificer Hive, along with the lowering of cooldowns and reload speed bump for agents who stick close to it, this build provides a ton of support. It's even more fun to run it in a group with one or more shield users, so long as you play close enough that they can stay within your Hive radius. Far from being just a lazy build, this setup may not get you the most kills, but it really helps your team and can make room clears incredibly fast when you remember to use your BTSU gloves. And that's it! I hope you guys give these builds a shot and have some fun with them. Chasing a new build always seems to cure the monotony for a while. Something that's kept me busy farming is trying to create these builds on each of my characters, but with Season 3 long since maxed out, I find myself running out of stuff to do in this game all over again. When doing Summit, I've found bringing multiple build options to switch to for different floors, such as using Vile Jammer against any drones, is a big help. A variety of options alongside maybe a healer will make you a valuable team member when the going gets really tough on the higher floors. On a side note, this is probably the last Division 2 specific video I will make. This game is enjoyable, but I've played it so much that I think I'm ready to move on to bigger and better things. I make videos like this for fun and to practice editing, and to get over listening to my recorded voice, and I'm very thankful that some of you enjoy them. More essays are coming, I promise. As always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoy this sort of content, please like, subscribe, and check out some of my other videos. Cheers!